All right, Doug Lesmerises with Nathan Baird and Stephen Means. Again, go read this story at cleveland.com/OSU. We're not just a podcast. We're not just three heads and three voices floating in the ether. There's a thing where words hit on the website thing, the interwebs, cleveland.com/OSU. Go there. Nathan put a lot of work into this. Nathan, you gave us like a good little tease about 10 minutes ago. There was this thing that changed the course of Kyle McCord's development. What is it? We can't wait longer. What are you talking about?
Well, all these guys work with private quarterback coaches to some extent, and not just the ones that happen to have fathered them. Like they usually go and get some kind of private tutelage along the way from professional guys. And it just so happened that at one point, the guy that reached out to the McCords to see if they wanted his help was a Super Bowl MVP named Phil Simms, who was obviously a Giants great for a long time. Him and his son, Matt, who played in the NFL, played at, I think, Louisville and Tennessee before that. Coach quarterbacks sort of in that greater New Jersey area. And they had heard about Kyle somewhere along the way. They tracked Derek down through a contact at Rutgers, someone I guess that they commonly knew, and said, hey, we'd like to just, we don't know if we can help him. We've heard some things. Maybe we'd like to come evaluate him. You guys can decide if you think it's worth it. And at the end of the day, they thought it was worth it, because what was sort of happening at that point, this would have been in, I think, April of his sophomore year. So after his sophomore season, he was already starting in high school and doing really good things with that St. Joseph Prep team. But the way Matt Simms explained it was that there was a sense that maybe he was plateauing a little bit. That you've got this really strong foundation. You've gotten into high school. You've already got, a good frame and stuff to you athletically, and you're performing and your team is winning. But that can't be good enough. Like, you have to try to take it up another level to do what a program like Ohio State is preparing you to do, or wants you to do, expects you to do. It's why they're courting you. And right now, the concept like the off-platform throw is sort of a buzzword. Like, I think Patrick Mahomes has really ratcheted that up in the discourse around all levels of football. And it was sort of just becoming a thing at that point. And that was the one area where they thought that he needed the most help. And that's not me predicting that he'll come in and do Patrick Mahomes-like things. But what it is just having an awareness of playing more athletically within the pocket and playing with a greater efficiency to be able to get something behind throws in an unconventional way, if that makes sense. Working on ways, because obviously Derek McCord, just having been a quarterback, had worked with him on doing rollouts and throwing on the run and things like that. But what you're talking about now with modern football at the upper levels of Power 5, guys who are aspiring to be in the NFL, that's not good enough. You have to be able to play outside the game, because defenses have just gotten so fast and strong and good, and you have to be able to work around the things that they're taking away from you. The best way Derek McCord put it was all the things that he was taught not to do when he was coming up in the late 80s and early 90s about throwing off your back foot and throwing across your body and all those things. And it's not that that's what you're told to do as a baseline, but you now have to be able to have those things in your tool bag in order to really succeed at this next level, because defenses are going to force you into those situations. So that was really where they helped him make a progression in his abilities as a quarterback. Matt Simms pointed out there was in the 2021 spring game, I can't remember if it was 2021 or I think one of the last two spring games. He came in and threw a touchdown pass to Joe Royer that was right down the seam. And he pointed it out as a very subtle example of what they had worked with him on, because something that might have taken him several steps, not steps with his feet, but just several points of progress through a play, now can be done in 2, 3, 4. And it's just much more streamlined, and you still get the power to throw that pass where you want it to go and with the emphasis it needs to be thrown. So those sort of things that helped him go from just being a productive high school quarterback to maybe being the kind of guy who could be a starter for a national championship contender.
I was just watching most of his throws from last season, and we'll get into exactly what he's done here at Ohio State. But Ryan Day did have him run like multiple bootlegs. They got him out of the pocket and got him out. Now, you just do that to get a guy out in space, so you don't have to try to see over the line. It opens up the field. There's a lot of ways that you run play-action boots with your quarterback to sort of maybe cut the field in half a little bit, make some easy throws for him. But he moves pretty well, and that's not off platform. But when you look at this package, Stephen, and hearing that, okay, this was something that they wanted to work on. They wanted to work on his athleticism. They wanted to work on him throwing on the run. People probably got tired of us talking about CJ's brain. I just love CJ's. It might be my favorite body part. CJ's brain might be my favorite body part of any human ever.
More than Pete Werner's neck?
Oh!
What
we're
if
gonna
you-
have the whole podcast.
Yeah, we're gonna have a pod. We're gonna have a pod where we have to build the perfect Ohio State football player based off body parts.
I think it's Pete Werner's neck, CJ Stroud's brain, Marvin Harrison Jr.'s torso, his long torso, right?
I think
what else? What would be the other one seed?
Chase Young's arms might be a 1 seed.
Yeah.
I think
Or maybe
CJ
Chase
Stroud's-
Young's dreads when it makes him look like the Predator.
Yeah.
Like, it's so intimidating.
Either that, or if we can go back in the past, either Eddie George or Ezekiel Elliott's abs, just so we can roll up the jersey.
Zeke's abs with the cutoff shirt. Zeke's abs are really good. Oh, Zeke's abs are probably a 1 seed too.
I think CJ Stroud's brain on top of Pete Werner's neck is basically the Lombardi Trophy, right? It's just a football on top of like a 3 foot tall, just solid steel neck.
If we built this trophy and it was like a 4 foot long torso with rock hard abs at the bottom of it, and then like a super awesome thick neck, and then a brain on top of it, we'd award it to like the best Buckeye body part. And a year from now, we'll be awarding it to JT Tuimoloau's hands because he tipped a bunch of passes. We'll be like, JT, here's this monstrosity of a thing. Oh, look, it's Marvin's torso. And that thing up there with all the ridges, that's CJ's brain. So anyway, what are we, Stephen? What's the body part that's going to define Kyle McCord? Because again, you look at him, he just looks sizable to me. He looks like he has some heft to him. And I'll be very curious if he becomes the kind of quarterback where maybe he's hanging around in the pocket and like shaking off a sack and then making a throw, and maybe it's shoulders, right? Maybe it's something where he's like, you can't bring this guy down. I'm curious to see how he plays once everybody lets it rip. But what are the leading body part candidates for Kyle McCord?
It's definitely right shoulder, because that's where you throw from, I think. Nathan knows baseball better than I do, but definitely right shoulder. He looks like an NFL quarterback.
Yeah.
Just physically, walking down the street. He looks like an NFL quarterback. So it's probably all of it. It's going to be the defensive end beat Josh Pryor, but it didn't matter. Or there was a nickel blitz that, because he's not CJ Stroud, whether he probably didn't point out, but it didn't matter because he shook him off anyway. And then he's ripping something to the slot to Emeka Egbuka. Or, I don't know, he's getting tackled and still he's strong enough to get a throw into the end zone to Marvin Harrison Jr. And we're going, oh, Ryan Day's probably losing his mind right now, but hey, it worked out, so who cares? I do think that it's the physicality that he kind of came into college with in a little bit, because CJ was a skinny little thing when he got here. Jax Miller, he was coming off a lot of injuries, so there was some physical stuff to catch up on. Kyle McCord, I remember the first time I saw him when they got here, he looked like he fit in immediately. It didn't look like there was – now maybe you chisel some stuff up, right, because this is still college football and he's been doing high school workouts, but just from a size standpoint, it didn't look like he didn't belong in that quarterback room the same way it did with a lot of the other guys. And I think that's what's going to allow him to stand out, which in a year like this where you don't have Paris Johnson on your backside and you don't have DeJuan Jones on the other tackle side, that probably is a little bit more important that you have a quarterback who can maybe fight off some stuff.
As we talked about a lot with CJ, it's hard to see the brain, right? You look at high school film, it's like, okay, it looks like he read something there and made the right throw, but we're not going to know for sure until Kyle gets into games and you see it. But the play, one of the plays that stands out from the Ohio State-Georgia game is that play where CJ shook off the sack and escaped to the right and then threw the touchdown. And that's the play where Ryan Day like had a conniption, like his body was shaking, like he couldn't control himself. And as much as we love the brain, I'll always love the brain. I think it is a high bar to expect every quarterback to process exactly like that. I'm not saying Kyle McCord can't do it. I'm saying we can't know. We can't know yet. But there is a physicality to the position also that, and I'm not saying CJ didn't have this, but a lot of times, and it's, again, the conversation with CJ to me is you diagnose the problem and solve it before it gets to you. You don't have to shake off the sack because the ball's out of your hand. But there's a physicality and a toughness that does sometimes come with quarterback play. And you can see how Ryan Day reacted to that. Maybe it's not what you draw up. No one draws up the play. It's like, okay, so here's the part. Tackle gets beat, you shake off the sack, and then you escape to your right and throw a touchdown pass. But when it breaks down, right? I don't know, Nathan. There's some of this stuff nobody wants it, but I can see the physicality. And then what you're talking about, Nathan, this off-platform stuff, I'll be really curious if that's where Kyle McCord makes a lot of money. And that maybe it's not quite as, safety did this, here comes this, ball's out of my hand, there it is, the way C.J. Stroud would do. But maybe there's a scooch bit more of, here comes the blitz, I'm going to shake it off and then do something. Could you see with what you talked about with what they wanted to develop, Nathan, that being something that is a trademark of Kyle McCord?
Yeah, and he's going to need it this year potentially more just because of what's going on with this offensive line. It's a little bit more unknown. And what they're asking some guys to do and some things that are moving around, and we don't know how solid it's going to be. So I think both of those things, it's having some physicality in the pocket to be able to, stay up on your own accord. It's also the escapability. I was talking to Derek McCord a little bit today, kind of finishing some things up, and he was mentioning he's actually down, or Kyle McCord down to like 216, 217, something like that.
Oh,
he's made some dietary changes, he said, over the last 8 months or so, which I know is your favorite thing.
Can I just do code, by the way? Code for Ohio State players making dietary changes is just not going to Canes as much. That's all it is.
That's, I think, literally all it is. But so it's only a couple of pounds, but it's like 3% body fat, which is not like he came in like a fat guy. Part of that was just to have more mobility. And, I don't think I was hearing these things necessarily in response to the narrative that's out there in comparing Kyle McCord to Devin Brown and which one might be more mobile. But I think they are aware of the need to be mobile at times, and they're trying to enhance that. Like he went and worked out with a speed coach in that week that he was home between the Peach Bowl and then coming back for winter interviews or winter workouts. They're talking about him going to California and working out with somebody else, maybe over spring break or later in the spring. So that's a part of their game that they are not neglecting here. That as much as he would thrive as a pocket passer, which is what everybody's been doing at Ohio State, including Justin Fields, since Ryan Day got here, really, starting with Haskins at the very least, that they know that this other part has to be a part of his game, and they want to enhance it. They think he's solid there already, and they want to allow him to use it more in the coming season.
So it's just one of those things when you're a quarterback, whether it's a free blitzer or whether it's somebody on the defensive line beating your guy, if pressure's in your face, you've got to be able to do, there's one of three things you have to do. You have to be able to process it and get rid of it. You have to be fast enough to get out of there, or you have to be physical enough that it gets to you, but it doesn't bring you down, and then you do something. And so I am very curious to see what model kind of Kyle McCord fits, right? Because we know what CJ was. Justin, I don't think anybody forgot this. Justin was big. Like Justin is big and fast. So Justin's like, I don't know, everything. Yeah. But Justin's fast enough to get out, but also try to bring that guy down. That guy's a load in the bottom half of his body, right? You're not going to – it's hard to bring Justin Fields down. What are you going to say, Nathan?
Well, and it's not just what he is physically. It's what he is sort of intangibly. Like Justin Fields is tough.
Yep.
Like Justin Fields got beat up at multiple times at Ohio State and came right back and like won games, big games. And I thought C.J. Stroud showed some of that same toughness. He didn't have quite the same level of physical adversity week to week, but he did early in his freshman year, like to the point where he had to take a week off and then came back and just threw the crap out of the ball for the next 4 weeks. And I thought some of those things showed that toughness. So that's again, whoever takes this job next, I think that sort of toughness is expected of anybody playing the position. We can talk about what their physical frame is and all that stuff, or what their height and weight is, but there's sort of just a level of toughness that has to come along with that too.
Yeah, I think McCord might live in the middle of both of those two guys, because to the point of Justin Fields was tough, he also like sawed it out sometimes. Sawed out to get hit.
Yeah.
But I remember that Nebraska game where there was a hit, he like lowered his shoulder, and we're all thinking, oh, he's down. This is over with. It's like, no. He's still up. That's the vegetarian diet kicking in right there. It's not going to bring him down.
Vegan.
Well, yeah, vegan. He was even more extreme with it. And then CJ Stroud was more of the, I'm going to get when he did run the 0.2% of the time, it was get what I can get and get out of bounds. Or he was more liable to throw it away the way Ryan Day likes to throw it away. While Justin Fields, that was a fight for 2 years getting him to throw it away. Kyle McCord might just live in somewhere in the middle of that, where he can be physical and seek it out when it's time to go seek it out. But also, he's not Justin Fields because there's only like nobody who's Justin Fields, as the NFL is finding out right now. So there's probably going to be some times where it is throw the ball away or get out of bounds as quickly as possible, but it might be a healthier balance than we've seen from the last two quarterbacks.
It is just interesting that these are all big guys. As you said, CJ was skinny, but like Bryce Young right now, right? Bryce Young, love Bryce Young, love everything about Bryce Young, poise, smarts, escapability, all those things. But there's a discussion at the NFL level. He's just smaller, like those are not the guys that are coming in under Ryan Day right now. It doesn't mean that Ryan Day wouldn't take Bryce Young if Bryce Young said, hey, Brian, I love Columbus. But there's a physicality to these quarterbacks of Ryan Day bringing in here. So let's talk about now what this is. It is a competition. How much so we know we have the competition in the spring of 2018 between Dwayne Haskins and Joe Burrow, which when you have a Heisman winner, number one draft pick, national champion who loses that battle, I don't know. Is it the greatest spring quarterback battle in the history of college football? I'll take other nominations, but it's up there because one guy won the Heisman and one guy beat out the guy who won the Heisman. So that's high level. Justin Fields comes in 2019. There's no competition. It's Justin Fields. We know that. 2021, it was a competition, right, with C.J. Stroud and Jack Miller and Kyle McCord. But, I don't know. Do we believe that, my main question, Nathan, is, do we believe 2023 to be any more of a competition than 21 was?
I think slightly.
Or is it sort of like, it is a competition, but Kyle's been here a year longer. He's the favorite.
I think it's slightly more of a competition, but I also think that there are a lot of similarities. And to the point that last year, Kyle McCord was clearly the backup quarterback. He was clearly the first guy coming in. And by the end of that 2021 season, by the end of the 2020 season, it was clear that C.J. Stroud was the backup to Justin Fields, to the point that when Justin Fields had to come out of games unscheduled, I think it was Michigan State where he had to come out, and then the best example is Clemson in the freaking playoff semifinals, season on the line, they put C.J. Stroud in the game. Now all he's doing is handing off, but it says something that they're putting him in the game at that point. So both of those guys came in with that sort of stamp of approval and a lead. Like they have a head start here a little bit. The other guy has to not just catch up, but pass them. And I think that's an important factor as we look at this. I don't think it's Ohio State's going to talk about this the way that they talk about it, because they have to develop two guys right now who are starting worthy. You want to take whatever Devin Brown has right now and push it as far as it can go. Maybe he will be the starter. I don't know. But let's say he's not. You still want to push that as far as it'll go and have him completely ready, because of something could happen to Kyle McCord at any time, as we were just talking about with Justin Fields in 2021 and CJ Stroud in 2020 and CJ Stroud in 2021. So the whole room they have to use the quarterback battle as a way to kind of elevate the whole room. But I think there are some similarities here as I look at it from the outside, that I still think that McCord comes in with the edge just because he was given that stamp of approval head-to-head last year. And while it can be a long time between December and the next August, in some ways it's not, and it's certainly not a long time since the Peach Bowl to now. We're talking it's been 6 weeks or whatever, and spring practice starts the week after next, and they're already doing the winter stuff, obviously. But this competition, while it is starting, or it started when they got back in January, it had already kind of started before that, because through the bowl practice and stuff, they were seeing these guys go head to head.
I think the one fundamental difference that makes this one at least semi more interesting than 2021 is that the other important variable here is it's still trying to learn the basics of, one, the offense, and two, just being in college. Because look, Kyle McCord is very, very good, and there was some talent level, and I think we all can agree that we probably think that if C.J. Stroud didn't exist, Kyle McCord probably would have beat out Jack Miller for the job. But that's just because he's super, super more talented than what Jack Miller was. That's the only scenario where Kyle McCord wins that, where he's that much more talented than the other guy he's going against, which is why Trevor Lawrence beat out Kelly Bryant down at Clemson when it was the same type of similar scenario to what that would have been. But a situation, it's like Kyle McCord was in high school, 2 weeks ago, and now he's doing winter workouts. While C.J. Stroud, I understand he didn't throw a pass, but he was playing college football. He was getting college football reps in practice. He was learning the playbook. He was in a college football weight and strength and conditioning program, all that other advantage and stuff. I understand Kyle's been here a year longer, but Devin Brown's not going to spend half of this spring trying to figure out where he's supposed to be at. He knows that already because he went through it. So there's that the basic, both of these guys know the basics, and so the only difference is Kyle McCord's older, so he's actually gotten a chance to play in a game the way that Devin Brown hasn't gotten a chance to play in the game. But because it's not that many reps, I don't know how much that matters in this situation. But I think outside of that, what makes this interesting is, like Corey just said, they're not night and day different, but they're different enough that it's almost like, is Ryan Day changing his philosophy on what he finds important in a quarterback, depending on who wins this battle? Because it feels very J.J. McCarthy and Kyle McCord were his choices as 2021 quarterbacks, and he went with Kyle McCord. And they're not the same quarterback. And it's kind of, what did you choose in that moment? Now, after having Justin Fields and C.J. Stroud through this program the last 3 years, do you change at all what you value? And if not, then Kyle McCord probably right now is a lot more of what Ryan Day wants than what Devin Brown is, even if Devin Brown is a very good quarterback. But if they pick Devin Brown, it's a signal to, yes, Devin Brown's gotten really good over the past year, but it also, there's an element that Devin Brown has with that running ability that, Nathan, you were just talking about. It had to be something Kyle McCord's had to develop. The other quarterbacks we've seen here, not named Justin Fields, that wasn't necessarily their forte.
So again, the shorthand, when you say, Corey Dennis says it's not night and day, but there is a difference. Just for people who are listening, yeah. I always hate that when I listen to like a podcast or something. So it says, well, there's a difference. Like, what's the difference? I don't know what it is. Like, what's the 30-second explanation of what the shorthand difference is between Kyle McCord and Devin Brown? Devin
Brown's a little bit more mobile, a lot more, but even more important, more willing to use it at times, sometimes to his detriment, but that's because he was young and seeing ghosts at times. But the mobile element is there for Devin Brown at that age in a way that it maybe wasn't there for Kyle McCord at that same age. And even whether C.J. Stroud had it or not, it wasn't something Ryan Day was encouraging him to do, while with Devin Brown, it's probably there a little bit more. And what he means by it's not night and day. It's not, if you pick Devin Brown, that means like you're giving up a lot of this other quarterback stuff, but at least he can run. Or if you're picking Kyle McCord, you're giving up the mobile ability completely, but at least he can throw the ball. They can both do it. It's just one, it's probably what helps them make them special, while with the other one, it's just this added thing they've had to develop. So you're not sacrificing it. You're probably just not maximizing it.
Burrow is the guy that like Devin Brown talked about the minute he got here. I mean, everybody wants to be Joe Burrow now. CJ Stroud thinks like Joe Burrow's a comparison, Devin Brown. But just like shorthand, CJ this year, and again, the college rushing stats sometimes can be goofy, but CJ this year ran it 47 times, and 12 of those were against Georgia. Joe Burrow, his Heisman year, ran it 115 times. So it's just maybe that, and I always thought that with Joe, that was like sort of the thing. And last time, by the way, in 2018, they picked the passer. Yep. Joe was much more of a runner than Dwayne was. I thought Joe was kind of in between JT and Dwayne. JT's basically a run-first quarterback. Dwayne is a run not at all throw quarterback. And Joe, I thought, had both abilities, and they were very comfortable with Dwayne, even though it wasn't Urban Meyer's system. very comfortable with Dwayne throwing the ball. So, again, I think we will be very curious what we learn about quarterback philosophy from this competition. But then again, in the end, they're going to pick the guy who's the best quarterback and gives Ohio State the best chance to win. Nathan, they're not going to pick philosophically. They're going to pick pragmatically. How do we win a national championship?
Yeah, I don't know that I actually think that I don't think it's going to be a philosophical choice. I think it's going to be because anytime we talk to Ryan Day about quarterbacks and we talk about some physical attribute they have, whether that was the way Justin Fields could run or the way CJ Stroud could throw or whatever, like he doesn't really care about arm strength. In fact, he's said things in the past like, well, arm strength is really overblown and speaking as a quarterback's coach. And he wants guys who make the right decision. That's really all he cares about. Like, there's nothing in the world that he hates more than like giving the ball away and having empty possessions and having to make up for, having third and longs, like, because he thinks of it like what makes it harder as an offensive coordinator. So that's what I think is going to determine this. And it's why I think that Kyle McCord has had that lead from the beginning, same way that CJ Stroud did in 2021, just because which one is more facile with the offense, which one is probably just more poised within having just been through more experiences. You would think that gives him an edge in this situation, because at the end of the day, I think that's what's going to be. You've been given the keys to this great offense. This offense doesn't necessarily need I'm not saying they need a game manager, but they don't need someone to come in with a specific skill set that elevates the offense. They need someone to come in and keep this offense just run the cleanest engine possible in some ways.
Yeah, I'm curious for the way when you have different skill sets, right? Where we do maybe have more physicality, we have more legs, we had a brain, you had Justin, and just how it allows you or forces you to talk about quarterback play. Ryan, it seems like Devin does this. How does that fit in this offense? How do you want him to do things? Ryan, it seems like Kyle has this ability. How do you want him to use that, right? And so I think those things that we've had 2 great years of covering CJ Stroud and high-level quarterback play from CJ Stroud, but it's just 2 different guys. So we're going to have different conversations about playing quarterback that I hope continues to inform us about what I do think is Ryan Day's evolving view on quarterback play, because Justin and CJ were different enough, and they were different enough from Dwayne, that you can see, okay, I like this, I like this, I like this, but ideally maybe we all do this, and then ideally maybe the next guy does this. And I just think it's a fascinating conversation for us to have with a guy who is a high-level quarterback teacher and has high-level quarterback talents, but with different skill sets all around him. So the competition is here. How are the McCords viewing it, Nathan? Because shorthand discussion, I think in any quarterback battle in the country, if the younger guy wins, you're on alert for what does the older guy do. Does the older guy say, I just got passed by the younger guy, I'm out of here? And if the older guy wins, you don't automatically assume that the younger guy would do the same, because you can still be on track. Kyle McCord is going to be a third-year college football player in 2023. He has not yet been a full-time starting quarterback, but he's on track. This is normal. He's not behind. Yes, some other guys in his class, and we'll talk about that, have already started, but he's on track. If he doesn't start in 2023 with how skilled and where he was rated out of high school, he would no longer be on track if he's not a starter in 2023. So and this is just facts of the way college football works right now. How are the McCords thinking about this?
And I almost interjected that into the conversation we were having before. That's the other huge difference from 2021. And it's the other huge difference from when Kyle McCord had to compete for a job at lower levels of his life, was that the stakes weren't nearly as high personally. Like in 2021, you came in as a true freshman. You didn't beat out the guy who was the returning backup, who was also a 5-star. You're like, okay, well, that's sort of how that's maybe supposed to happen. And then you have to now do this tutelage, this apprenticeship for a couple years. But now, if you don't win, yes, there are repercussions here, and then there are roster repercussions. And I think it's so obvious that I did have to ask the McCords about that. And the family has a lot of confidence just that they get from Kyle, because the way that they look at it, it's something that they think about and worry about as parents, and because maybe they think they have to, but in a way that he doesn't, because he can't maybe bother to worry about that right now. Like, he's got to go win this job. Like, why would you be? I think that's almost the way any quarterback probably should approach that. It's like, I can't worry about not winning the job while I'm trying to win the job. Ryan Day has said things like that before, that you've got to make sure that you're operating the room the correct way, that these guys understand, these are the things you have to do, but you can't let every day be a referendum on who has the job, and you can't be tracking it quite like that. But this is a guy who has always had a certain, just that, I think, that very natural quarterback swagger on the field. I was asking, him and his Derek, and his Derek is the father, and his wife Stacy, Kyle's mom. Like, just growing up, do you catch yourself? And she's an educator, so she has her own way of looking at young people. And like, do you catch yourself like looking for like intangibles? And they said, yeah, like you would see him with his peer groups, and even sometimes older kids when he was young, like doing a lot of leadership sort of things. And Matt Sims said the same thing, not encountering him until he was in his high school years, but that you saw some of those same quarterback intangibles that someone needs to have in order to call themselves a potential NFL quarterback. So because he has all of those things, and they see him look at this as just, hey, if I go out and do what I'm supposed to do, then it'll work out. That's how they're sort of taking their cues right now. They're aware of the possibilities, and as parents, I think you maybe think, well, okay, we have to have some sort of plan B here if things don't go right. Which would only be not going right for them, obviously, not necessarily not going right for Ohio State, because Ohio State's just trying to find the best quarterback. But for him, it does not. Anyway, like, from talking to him and from talking to the family, you don't sense a great concern about this, and I don't think it's like a cockiness or even a thought that like it's deserved that he takes the job, but just that it's he's not approaching it that way. That it's just about going out and doing the work.
So where are we going into this? Again, we're about 2 weeks away from the start. We are assuming Kyle McCord wins. They both look good. Kyle McCord wins. Like, Steven, I don't know. How are we thinking about this? How should fans be thinking about it?
Yeah, I think Kyle McCord wins. I think that the approach with this ideally has been Kyle McCord wins the job this year, which keeps your room from blowing up, and he kind of pulls a Dwayne Haskins, and then Devin Brown maybe is set up to do the exact same thing next year, and then maybe whoever your 2024 quarterback is the next time we see a multi-year starter. I'm not saying it's going to go exactly to that plan, but I have that in the back of my mind of, until something shows me that maybe that plan is not possible, there's no reason to believe that isn't what's going to happen here. So because of that, I think Kyle McCord ends up winning, and Devin Brown is now the true. You kind of go from third string to true backup before you take the starting job.
Yeah, I look at it as McCord is still the betting favorite. The one wrinkle is, this is a pretty savvy family as it comes to football things. There's not a great track record of underclassmen with 1 year of starting experience going to the NFL and then having that translate to success. So it may not be a one and done thing as far as him being the starter. But that's where, that's how they've recruited the room. They want there to be, they were in that stretch where it was going to be a kind of superstar guy every year and let the chips fall where they may. So we'll see. It's not like it's a guarantee that he wouldn't be able to leave after 1 year and do something. But I think that's something that everyone is cognizant of. Like that stat is out there now enough that it's like whatever the number, it's like 25 starts is kind of almost like the golden threshold that you want to have.
Bill Parcells, I think, made up that stat. Mm-hmm. And there was a time when I definitely thought like NFL people were like holding on to it too much, and it was sort of a bygone era. But then like Mitch Trubisky was a 1 year starter and kind of didn't exactly work out. And Dwayne was a 1 year starter and did not set the world on fire right away in Washington. Again, I think there were other things working against him in Washington. And again, as we know, Dwayne's tragic passing, who knows what his career may have been like if he'd been able to reset it. But
even Mac Jones, though, he goes to, team of all teams for the last 20 years, and he was decent his first year, and it's kind of fallen off a cliff there. He's a 1-year starter, so there's something to that.
It's interesting. I do agree with the idea that I don't think anything is guaranteed, but also if Kyle McCord sets the world on fire, it's going to be a first round pick. It's hard to turn that down. You guys like the old betting stuff? You like the betting? I got my app.
I don't.
Got my DraftKings app.
It makes baby Jesus sad when we gamble.
Can I just say, I don't want to say that gambling is easy and you're guaranteed to win.
I mean, it's easy to do. I don't know if
it is easy to do.
Yeah.
But I'll just say, I want to find out the answer to this question. The live betting, that when you have it on your phone and you can live bet every second of a game, the opening line becomes meaningless. The opening line is meaningless because, especially over the course of a basketball game, basketball is a game of runs. And over the course of a game, no matter what team you want, you are very likely to get a better point spread for your team on either side at some point in the game. Because if you like a 10-point underdog, well, that underdog's probably going to get behind, and then all of a sudden you're going to get 14. Or if you like the team who's favored by 10, well, that underdog might start off hot. Now you're only favored by 7. So anyway, I don't know if it's an algorithm or a person, but the live lines overreact to runs in basketball. And I have had some modicum of success just being like, okay, well, somebody went on an 8-0 run and it moved the line 5 points, but it doesn't mean that team's going to now win by 40. The other team's just going to go on an 8-0 run at some point too. So anyway, I've been on my app. That's all I'm saying. Don't do it, though. Don't do it. Like Nathan said, don't do it. So do you guys want to guess? Well, yeah.
I'm just curious. Are you wagering enough yet that you could buy a new phone case for that phone? Like, I think of you as like I had a sports editor in Danville, Illinois, Bob Costello. We would go to the OTB in Danville once in a while for these for our sports meetings, and he was so cheap. He would make like $2 show bets on like 8 to 5 favorites. Like you could, so like if you won, you made like 30 cents. I assume that you're maybe a similar bettor to that.
I am the king of the $3 bet. I am the king. There's nothing I won't bet $3 on, but there's most things I won't bet 4 on. 4 is a little steep for me. Here are the Heisman odds. I'm not going to give them to you. I'm going to tell you that on the DraftKings app that I am looking at, the Heisman odds, I am seeing 4 Ohio State players listed in the Heisman odds. And the Heisman odds go as high. I'm trying to see if there's a 5th guy. Go as high as 200 to 1 for some guys. 300 to 1 we're at now. Oh, 300. Okay. 300 to 1 is the highest. There are 4 Ohio State guys listed. Who do you believe is the heaviest Heisman favorite, Nathan, among Ohio State players? Who's the first Heisman bet, do you think?
I think it's probably McCord just because it's a quarterback award now for the most part.
What do you think, Steven?
That should be the answer, but it's probably Marvin.
It is Kyle McCord.
Oh, let's getting smart.
Who do you think is second?
I think
among
second.
Ohio State players?
No, Marvin's second.
Trevion Henderson is second. And then I will tell you that Devin Brown and Marvin Harrison Jr. have the same odds for the Heisman right now. So
let me go download DraftKings real quick.
This was the whole thing last year when it was like Will Anderson and Jackson Smith and Jigba were both like 100 to 1 in the offseason. And I was like, oh, let's go.
Yeah.
And then it was like,
but unlike betting on a horse race or unlike betting on a line in a college basketball game, you don't get credit. You can't bet for a close loss.
Yeah,
you can't.
That's true.
So it's can they win it? And receivers win it so rarely that I guess I sort of understand.
So knowing that Kyle McCord is the heaviest Ohio State Heisman favorite, Steven, what do you think his odds are? What to 1? 3 to 1, 8 to 1, 50 to 1? What do you think Kyle McCord is?
I'll say 30-1 right now. And then, just for the sake of throwing it out there, when Ryan Day announces him as the starter, I guess that's me marking it down who I think is going to win it. It might go down to like 12-1, just because that's where we're at with Ohio State's quarterback right now.
You probably could just put bets on both the Ohio State quarterbacks right now, and then somebody's odds are going to drop once at least the starter. Nathan, what do you think Kyle McCord is? What odds?
I think Steven's actually probably pretty close. I was thinking like 20 or 25-1. So maybe like 25-1 right now. But I think he comes down once we know who the starter is.
22-1. He is tied for the 10th best odds. Caleb Williams, Jordan Travis, who's the quarterback at Florida State, Drake May at North Carolina, Bo Nix at Oregon, Michael Penix Jr. at Washington, Sam Hartman at Notre Dame, Joe Milton at Tennessee, Jaden Daniels at LSU, Quinn Ewers is 20-1.
Where's Arch?
And then Kyle McCord and Drew Aller are tied at 22-1. Travion Henderson is 30-1. And Marvin Harrison Jr. and Devin Brown are both 60-1. So those are the Ohio State Heisman odds at the moment on DraftKings. You're nodding, Nathan?
Well, yeah, but that tells you what Steven was saying. I think it's true that if he and Drew Aller have basically the same odds right now, same level of like unknown production going this year, then the one who is the quarterback for Ohio State is going to have the better odds once he for sure has the job.